In 1980, Vietnam once again mobilized 600,000 troops to approach the Sino Vietnamese border, and the war was imminent. But unexpectedly, Deng Xiaoping ordered our army to stay put. So why did China choose to wait and see in such a tense situation? What kind of considerations are hidden behind this? Back then, Vietnam suffered a great loss in the self-defense counterattack war and should have kept quiet for a while. Unexpectedly, a few years later, it suddenly took frequent actions, sent heavy troops to press the border, and publicly threatened to launch a new round of attack at any time. What's even more exaggerated is that the Vietnamese side also loudly claimed that they had not lost the war. Although their troops had long been driven back to Hanoi, they claimed that they had the ability to continue fighting. Such ignorant remarks, coupled with the action of the army approaching the border, the purpose is very obvious. The Vietnamese side wants to provoke another war. As soon as the news came out, it immediately attracted the attention of the international community. Military experts from various countries expressed their confusion, thinking that Vietnam was simply beaten stupid. It was really puzzling that it took the initiative to provoke again not long after being beaten. Some Western military analysts even believed that if Vietnam really took action again, the consequences would not only be being beaten to Hanoi again, but it might even be directly destroyed. In such a background of public opinion, various parties speculated on how China would respond. Many people were eagerly waiting to see how badly the Vietnamese side would be beaten. However, surprisingly, in the face of the threat of 600,000 Vietnamese troops, China did not mobilize its army to fight, but chose the strategy of keeping quiet and weak. This move triggered a new round of heated discussions, and many military commentators expressed their confusion. Faced with such a large-scale military pressure, even if they did not take the initiative to attack, they should be prepared to prevent the Vietnamese army from taking risks. But things are far from as simple as the outside world imagines. It was this time that Deng Xiaoping did not take action, which fully demonstrated his strategic foresight. He had already seen the real intention of the Vietnamese side. They did not want to fight for real, but were bluffing and pretending to try to save some face in front of the international community. Although Vietnam is ambitious, it also knows that if it really fights, it will only be severely punished again and has no chance of winning. To put it bluntly, the 600,000 strong army approaching the border is just a show for outsiders to see. It is a staged military action. Those who are familiar with the 1979 self-defense counterattack against Vietnam know that it took our army less than a month to completely defeat the Vietnamese army. Not only did it protect our border and safeguard the lives and property of our people, but more importantly, it dealt a heavy blow to Vietnam's expansionist ambitions. This war was not only a military victory, but also a fatal blow to its development potential. During the retreat, our army also destroyed many key industrial facilities and resource bases of Vietnam, and took back the food and weapons supplies that had been provided, fundamentally limiting Vietnam's subsequent military capabilities. Vietnam, which was severely damaged after the war, could hardly restore its national strength on its own, and could only hope for external support. In order to win international assistance, they must show the outside world that they still have combat effectiveness, even if it is just a pretense. It was in this context that Vietnam chose to mobilize 600,000 troops to create momentum, trying to help others regain some trust. There is another important reason why China chose to keep its troops in place. At that time, China was at a critical stage of comprehensively promoting reform and opening up. The country needed to concentrate on developing the economy and building infrastructure. It was really not worth wasting national strength on Vietnam's bluffing. Moreover, Deng had long judged that Vietnam would not really take action, so there was no need to bother with them. Facts have also proved that Deng's judgment was correct. In 1984, while China continued to develop its economy, it also freed up its hands to launch the famous 2 or 3 rounds of war. It conducted actual combat training for its troops with Vietnam as its opponent. This not only hit the remaining arrogance of the Vietnamese army, but also fulfilled Vietnam's original intention of provocation. Vietnam's strategy to provoke China ultimately backfired. The massive deployment of 600,000 troops failed to intimidate or impress, and instead revealed Vietnam's weakened state to the international community. With no real intention to fight and no support from global powers, their bluff collapsed under the weight of its own emptiness. Meanwhile, China, under Deng Xiaoping's calm and calculated leadership, stayed focused on modernization and national development, refusing to be dragged into a pointless confrontation. This moment became a turning point in China's strategic doctrine. By choosing patience over provocation, China demonstrated that real strength lies in restraint and vision. Deng's foresight allowed the country to channel its energy toward economic reform and global integration to decisions that would later transform China into a major world power. In contrast, Vietnam's aggressive posturing only deepened its isolation and decline. It was a quiet but powerful victory won not on the battlefield but through wisdom and timing.